Hey guys, this is Anthony Morganti. I am MrPhotographer.com. In this video, I'm going to review the BenQ SW270c Photographer Monitor. Before we begin, if you could do me a favor and subscribe to my YouTube channel, and remember to click on that little bell so you get updates. Also, follow me on Instagram. I am at Anthony Morganti on Instagram, and in the description below this video, I'll have a link to my Instagram as well. I've been planning on updating my monitor, but I wasn't planning on doing it until next year. Well, a couple weeks ago, BenQ emailed me, and they asked me if I wanted to do a review on the SW270c monitor. And of course I said yes, and they sent it out to me. Well, I really didn't research monitors too much. Even though I was planning on updating my monitor, I wasn't planning on doing it till next year, and I planned on doing my research then. But in the back of my mind, I thought I wanted to get a 4K monitor. Well, this is a 2K monitor. And doing the research on the differences between a 2K monitor and a 4K monitor, I found that many photographers prefer to process images on a 2K monitor, mainly for two reasons. One is the applications you use, such as Photoshop and Lightroom, when they're on a 4K monitor, the writing is going to be very small. So the Lightroom tabs will be very little, the sliders are going to be very minuscule, and it makes it more difficult to process images. The other reason is that because it's a 4K monitor, whenever you're looking at an image, that given image size is going to be smaller on the monitor compared to the 2K monitor. So it's going to be more difficult to see any defects you may have in the image and be able to catch them. So most photographers, to my surprise, really do prefer to use a 2K monitor for their image processing, and that's probably why BenQ markets this as the Photographer Monitor, and they have that written right outside the box, or right on the box, the Photographer Monitor. Now, once I've started to use the monitor, I really like it. It has some really great features, and the best feature, in my opinion, is the hookup. You can see I have it hooked up to my MacBook Pro via a Lightning 3 cable. So all data, including the image, is transferred from my MacBook Pro through the Lightning cable to the monitor. That's the only hookup there is. Now, if you're not an Apple user, if you have a PC or laptop that has DisplayPort through USB-C, that will work identically. So you just have the one cable, and it's a bi-directional cable. And what that means is you have it hooked up, you're sending all applications and images to this monitor, but on the side of this monitor, it also has an SD card slot and two USB jacks for peripherals. So you could hook a USB external hard drive to the monitor directly and or plug in an SD card to the monitor directly, and it's as though you plug them directly into your computer. Your computer sees it as a peripheral. So I could have my Lightroom library, which I keep on an external hard drive, plugged into this monitor, and whenever I plug my MacBook Pro into it, it's going to load on the desktop like I have it set up to load, and I'll access it as though it was plugged into this. Now, if you don't have a computer that has a DisplayPort USB-C or the Lightning 3 capabilities, you still could hook up your computer to the monitor. It has normal DisplayPort, and it also comes with a DisplayPort to DisplayPort mini adapter, so it will be able to hook up to probably most PCs out there that use DisplayPort. It also has two HDMI ports, so you could hook up, if you have a computer that has an HDMI port on it, you could just hook that up to the monitor. Then you could hook your cable box or your satellite dish directly into the monitor as well and switch between those two ports. Also, it has picture-in-picture. I haven't used that feature, but if you do have multiple inputs to the monitor, you could have them picture-in-picture if you want. And I don't know, watch a movie while you're processing your images. Now, if you're using HDMI to hook up to the monitor, from a computer. The ports on the side that I mentioned, that SD card slot and the two USB jacks, you would think wouldn't work because, of course, the HDMI cable is one way. It doesn't accept data going in the other direction. Well, they have a jack on the back of here, a port on the back, that will allow you to have downstream communication. It's a USB port that you plug in, a USB cord, and then plug the USB cord into your computer, and then you'll still be able to use the jacks on the side for adding a peripheral to your system and still be able to get the signal, video signal to the BenQ. So as far as hookups go, you're covered. My recommendation is, if you can, just use the USB-C with DisplayPort or Thunderbolt 3. One connector, you're done. You're ready to go. If you have an older computer, you could still use the HDMI. Just send a USB cable from the port on the back to your computer. That way, the USB jacks and the SD card slot on the monitor will work, and you'll be able to have some peripherals plugged into here and use it that way. The back of the monitor also has an audio jack, so you could use that for headphones or external speakers as well. Now, as far as the physical functionality, on the front of the monitor are 5 buttons and a power button. The 5 buttons are used to choose which input you want, that being the USB-C or the DisplayPort or the HDMI, one of the two HDMI. Also, you could access the menu system through that and navigate through your menu systems with those buttons. It also has a wired remote. They call it a hockey puck, and it's a little fast way to get through the menu system of the BenQ, so you can just use that instead of reaching over and hitting those buttons on the front of the monitor. Now, some brief technical things about the monitor. It is 99% of the Adobe RGB color space, and it's around, I think, 96 or 97% of the P3 color space, and it's 100% of the sRGB color space. One of the things I noticed right away when I was looking at images on the monitor is it's got tremendous dynamic range. They call it this HDR, but they don't mean it like in the photographer sense of HDR, where you're combining multiple images of different exposures together. What they're talking about is they have a lot of shades of gray between absolute white and absolute black. And if you have that more dynamic range, the images look more true to life, and they really do look richer and fuller on this monitor than I'm used to seeing, at least on my MacBook Pro and my 27-inch iMac. Now, speaking of my 27-inch iMac, my main complaint with that monitor, or the computer system itself, is the glare. It's a really shiny screen. As you can see on this is a matte finish, and you have these shields that go around the monitor to help take away glare. And of course, that helps you better see your images when you're processing them, and it really is a great asset. Now, the older versions of the BenQ monitors, my complaint with those were that these shades were very difficult to take off. Once you put them on, it was like they were on. They were hard to take off. They redesigned it in this model, and they're very easy to attach and to remove. I mean, it will take you less than 3 minutes to put them on, and it will take you just a minute or two to take them off. So that they've improved greatly. Also, the monitor moves up higher than previous versions and goes down a little lower than previous versions. And of course, it swivels side to side. And like previous versions, you could spin it so that it's in portrait orientation instead of landscape orientation. But one thing, it only gives you the shades for horizontal orientation. They don't give you the shading if you prefer to keep this in a portrait orientation, which, to tell you the truth, most people don't, unless you're maybe processing some video for a live Instagram feed or something like that where you're shooting vertically. But most often, you're going to have this monitor horizontal. Now, more about the color for a second. They have what they call AQCOLOR Technology, which really allows you to see the subtleness of the colors. So if you're looking at, let's say, an apple on a monitor, and then you see an apple on this monitor. On this monitor, you're probably going to see more subtlety in the shades of the colors of red on the apple. And that's color technology that is proprietary to BenQ. Another feature I really like of this monitor is calibration. Now, those of you that have calibrated a monitor before, you probably are used to taking your colorimeter and plugging it into your computer and then putting it on the screen and all that. And once you do all that, the software you use will come up with a color profile for your monitor, and it stores the color profile in the computer. And the computer applies that to the output to the monitor. This works a little different. This, you calibrate the monitor, but the calibration info is kept inside the monitor. They have a chip in here that will hold that information. So you could calibrate this monitor and it won't matter what computer you plug into it. It will always output a calibrated display. Now, you don't need any special colorimeter to calibrate this monitor. You could use what you're used to. I use the X1 Display Pro by X-Rite colorimeter. With this, I use the BenQ software. They call it Palette Master. I use their software with this colorimeter, and it will calibrate the monitor properly and store that calibration information in the monitor, like I mentioned. So this comes in great, especially in my household. My son wants to process his images with his laptop. He could just plug it into this monitor and he's sure that the display he's seeing is calibrated. Then I want to process my images with my MacBook. I could plug it in and I'm sure that it's calibrated. I don't have to keep individual calibrations for my MacBook, for my son's laptop, and other computers we might have in the household. One thing I will add is you don't have to remove the hoods to use this. There's a little access door on the top. You just push that open and then you could just send the cord up through here and then calibrate the monitor fine. And that's it. That's the BenQ SW270c Photographer Monitor. I'd like to thank BenQ for sending me this. I think it's awesome. It's probably my favorite monitor I've ever used, and I've been a photographer a long time, and I started digital photography right when, it began, and I had all different types of computers over the years, all different monitors over the years, but this is the best monitor I've ever used. I do want to try a 4K monitor someday, and if I ever do purchase a 4K monitor, or if BenQ ever wants to send me a 4K monitor, I will compare the two, because I think that's important to find out for yourself whether or not a 4K monitor would work for you for photography, or a 2K monitor would be better for you for photography. Now, if you're a videographer and you're shooting 4K, use a 4K monitor because that's natural. But for us photographers, everything I'm reading and from what I've seen with my own eyes, this monitor works great. So thank you again to BenQ. Thank you everyone who watches my videos. I really do appreciate it. I'll talk to you guys soon.